competing. Now, we've got a bunch of questions to get through. If you've never been on the webinar before, we tend to go through it. I'll answer the question that's been submitted, then Ali will, then Clara will, but we'll probably I'll chip in and give my opinion on Ali's question, vice versa. So I hope you're all well. Ali, do you want to kick off like you always do? And I'll just admit everyone that's joining in, and then we'll just go Ali, me, Clara, Ali, me, Clara.
Yep. So it's a good question, actually. So the question is, how do you like to approach a show, like getting clients ready for a show? Do you like to have them ready early and cruise in? And wait, what was the other part of that question? Yeah, so do you like clients to be ready early and cruise in? And then how that is for a coach's viewpoint and a client's viewpoint. So I suppose, yes, you do always want to have people ready in time. So it makes more sense. But with that, it depends as well what style of competitor it is. Obviously, myself and Vaughn and Clara all do the same thing, where you want people to be ready enough that you can try out carb loads, things like that. But you don't want someone ready way too early, because anyone that's ever been stage lean will tell you that you don't want to be prolonging that too long. So it's hard to hold. I think it also depends totally on the person, because
All right, sorry, Alice, keep going.
yeah. Can you hear me?
Like a
See, if there's like a dog that barks, if your TV's on, please do just mute your sound. I will try and on anyone that is saying that, but Ali. Right, tell you what, I'm just going to take over from what Ali was saying. Now, in regards to being ready too early, the thing is, it's going to come down to your mental fucking resilience at times, isn't it? If you've got the testicular fortitude, and yes, ladies, that is you as well, to get ready early, then you're in it like...
Robin.
Imagine being 2 weeks out and thinking, you know what, we're doing okay here. We'll just cruise in. We don't need to do any more cardio. We've went from doing 15,000 steps to now we're doing 8. We went from doing cardio every single day to now we're doing an incline walk. You can see the benefit that would give you mentally, knowing that, well, we're just going to cruise in. But then on the flip side of that, as a competitor, you're always going to want to be like, I like doing more, right? And if I'm not doing more, I feel like I'm behind. And oh my God, like that girl's on the Stairmaster, and I should be on the Stairmaster. And the thing is, if you simply just stay in your lane and stick to your guns, listen to your coach, you should be absolutely fine. Now, again, it will be client dependent on whether you're going to get them ready early or not, because everyone's going to get ready at different times. I'll come in very, very quick, whereas Ali will take a bit longer, right? We're two guys. If one female like Clara could take way longer than Laura. So it just completely depends on the person. And this is where we can give you generic advice and standard advice, but it's all going to be like individualized to yourself. That makes sense. Yeah, Clara, do you have anything else to add?
No, I was just going to say that it definitely is, I think, an advantage to not be ready too early, as you said. But in my last prep last year, we were absolutely digging deep, and then 2 weeks out, exactly what you said there, we stopped all the intense cardio. It was 20 minutes incline walk every day. Steps were down, food was up, and actually I got leaner because so much of that stress was removed. So to an extent, you want to have that confidence that, that your physique is pretty much there. That is just small tweaks, because ultimately, holding for a couple of weeks before you step on stage is not a huge deal, because you won't have come that far. Like, you've not done a 16 or 18 week prep to then not finish it strong. So that's pretty much it for me.
I think that would kind of lead quite nicely on to one of the questions I've got about peaking a female bikini competitor. Now, this is going to be different than peaking a figure girl, or peaking, like, the difference between, would you peak a toned bikini girl versus a trained figure girl, athletic figure girl, totally different, right? Totally different than what you do with that, also a guy. Now, Laura, you will be more than likely a toned bikini girl, right? So this is again what I do, probably what Ali does and what Clara will do as well, we'll always get you ready early and reverse diet you out just like I did with Clara, right? So if you listen to what Clara said, her calories 3 weeks out from our first regional, we're averaging at 900 across the week, right? And I remember I was in Mexico and I sent her a text and I upped it from it was 9, and I think we went to 1150. And then and Clara was like, what? And then a week went by and she looked better. And she was leaner, right? I was like, I don't want her to get leaner. So what did I do? I upped it again, right? And then reduced steps and everything like that. And it ended up being we were going into the finals, I'm sure we were at 1350, maybe 1400.
Yeah, something like that.
When we were at 900 before, right? So in regards to peaking her, all I done was I reverse dieted her out. Her food peak week was exactly the same calories almost every single day, bar 7 days out, which I front loaded her effectively because I knew what she looked like 6 days after that, because it was just through practice and through her sending me photos, videos fucking twice a day, every single day for umpteen weeks beforehand. But did I mess about with water? No, right? I think perhaps the day before the show, I would often say to a client, right, where's water intake been at? And then let's say you've been having 5 litres. I'll say, right, day before the show, we're going to have 2.5. Right? Now, I will usually put in it's not a drying out process because the bikini girl doesn't need to be dry, right? But you do still want to remove subcutaneous water. So we're going to use something like H2 Remove by Anabolic Designs, or Expel is another one that's similar. So we put that in. We didn't carb load her at all. Cardio was out by that point because she was ready, and that was really it. Whereas what you said from your experiences where you got peaked like a boy. And that's the one thing that frustrates me, is that often females in the industry are treated like mini male bodybuilders.
Yep.
It's just aren't. You really aren't. Now, are there some similarities between the more muscular girls and prepping a male bodybuilder? Yeah, of course there are. The food's just not going to be quite as high, right? Mm-hmm. But for peaking a bikini girl, I always just say get ready early, reverse out. If you can, not everyone can get ready early. That's the thing. That was Clara's second prep. If it's first time bikini prep, you're probably not going to be ready early.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to be catching up, because there's probably at some point, being in that prep, some sort of slip up on the diet, some sort of off plan that wasn't supposed to happen. And as a coach, I think you need to factor that in. And it's why for someone's first prep, it's always going to be 18, 20 weeks. Why? Because they just fuck up. Whereas you'll see me or Ali or whatever do diet for 8, 10, 12 weeks. But that's just because we don't fuck up. And obviously we're on loads of gear in that.
What was the question? I'll add to it.
And it was about peaking. Peaking a female.
Sorry, by the way, my Wi-Fi wasn't working. Peaking females, again, a lot of these questions will be person dependent, but for example, when I peaked Chloe, my client that you'll see on my Instagram 2 years ago, she was too lean for bikini. That was the feedback from the PCA. So I then needed to start bringing her out of that. So she was 1.5 kilos heavier when she won her UQP British finals than she was at the PCA. So for a month, she was on pretty high calories. She went probably from 1,200 to about 1,900. Lauren, my client as well, she was just way too lean for bikini. You don't really want to see ab veins everywhere. So she was on crazy calories. She was 2,200 leading into the show for 3 weeks, and 5,000 steps, no cardio.
It's pretty much just exactly what I just said.
Yeah.
So that, as you can see, me and Ali do the same thing.
Yeah, same principle.
Clara?
I mean, I've never prepped a female into a show, but I would say that definitely, from my experience of peaking, as you said, the first year we prepped, it was nice to have a photo shoot a few weeks before my show to sort of trial that and see what, how we looked by doing what. and then having the extra 3 weeks in between the show, so between the shoot and the show, to kind of repeat what had worked last time. And then with this year was just, you know, kind of putting in the vitamin C, and then just kind of like gliding into the week, and just getting psychologically ready to step on stage and just getting excited. I think the good thing about being ready early is that you can then get excited. You're not stressed, because the last thing you want to be is stressed before your show. So I suppose that's like one of the more important factors to have in there too.
Yeah, 100%. Now, we kind of went off a big tangent on that one. That was supposed to be all about peaking. We started talking about reverse dieting. So we're going to try and rein it in, right? So Clara, it's your turn for question. So
the question I got was, how do you know if you're cut out to compete? Which I thought was a really good question, because to be honest, you don't. You don't know if you're cut out for it until you do it. But some of the things that you do need to make sure, at least in my opinion, is that before you start that, you've worked with your coach for a long enough period of time that they know your body inside and out, and that you fully trust them, because you know, you're going through such an arduous process that takes for so long, especially as a female. And towards the end, I mean, you can't tell right from left. Like, you've got no clue what the hell's going on. So you need to really make sure that you trust your coach fully, and that you are able to be coached by them right up until the end, and to take instructions whenever they give you them. So when Vaughan said to me, we're upping your food and we're reducing your calories, it wasn't for me to second guess him. Even though I wanted to, and I, you know, as you said, I wanted to keep going on the same master, keep, you know, in that deficit thinking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen if not? You need to be able to trust your coach. So I guess the first thing to know if you're cut out for it is, well, do you have a good coach-athlete relationship in order to take you through that journey? And then obviously I think that from a mental health perspective, it is going to take a toll towards the end, especially. So as females, but also as males, I think starting off from a place where you have a sound relationship with yourself, with your body, that all the things in your life are as stable as they could possibly be, is going to give you a really good starting point. Because it's hard in and of itself. You are going to have to start spending more and more time in the gym, doing cardio, doing steps. Not everyone's really going to understand. So if you don't have a strong, stable system around you, if you're not sound in between your two ears, at the end you're going to be fucked, and there's no real way around it. And it's not so much the dieting down and getting ready for a show, it's how well are you going to come out of it, because ultimately you want it to be a really positive experience that gets you more than just a cool couple, you know, fucking photos for your Instagram. Like, you want to make it something that you can learn from and that you can take from and apply to other things in life. So knowing whether you're cut out of it, I think you need to be really, really sound in terms of your mental health, in terms of your body image. You need to be comfortable with yourself at a higher body fat percentage, but also knowing that you are going to get really lean. You need to make sure that the people around you are going to know how to support you. And to be honest, as I said, you're not going to know if you're cut out for it until you do it, but it's not something you can do half-assed. Like, you need to go fucking balls in and, you know, give it everything you've got, because otherwise it's not worth it. It's not.
Yeah. I think, see, to be fair with that, sorry, I'll jump in.
No, go for it. I was pretty much done with my
I think my answer was, because like me and Vaughan and you'll get a lot of messages like this. Like, I think this message happens a lot where it's like, hey mate, how are you getting on? I've always wanted to compete, but I don't think I can. And like, I'm always like, what? But like, we'll all tell you, like, apart from, so Chloe's a good example here because you can see her stage shot there. Apart from people who are freaks, when you go on stage the first time, like, I look back at my photos and I'm like, fuck, why did my coach let me even go on stage like that? But I also look at it like, I still prepped that entire time and didn't fuck up, and I still done what I needed to. So I always say to people, if your goal is to compete, go do it. Now, there might be challenges along the way, and you might be like, whoa, because first prep, people genuinely think it's easy to get lean. Like, honestly, like, they're like, oh yeah, I want to prep. Like, I'll be ready in like 8 weeks, and I'm like, try 22 weeks. Like, so I think the first time, the honest answer is, if anyone in this chat wants to go on stage and you haven't, just go for it. Like, you never know, it might be life-changing. You never know, you might hate it more than you hated anything on earth. So it's just a case of, anyone's got the ability to do it. It might just take longer periods. So that's my thinking of it. Like, how do you know if you've got the minerals for it? Go try.
Tell you a story. I remember Ali's first prep, and him telling me that he was crying as he finished eating a bowl of porridge, and he started crying because he was in 3 hours and he was so hungry. Your first prep will always be the hardest one, right? You'll always do stupid shit. You'll always think stupid shit. You'll have cravings for like beetroot and stuff. It's just anyway, right? But anyway, swiftly moving on. Ali, it's back to you in regards to questions before you.
Yes, I think this one kind of ties in with a little bit what Clara said. So, how much can competing affect your work life and relationships? So, I'll go into work life first. Robin's actually just ran away, or I would have got her to answer this for me. But with the work life, I think from a perspective of every time myself and Vaughn have prepped, Clara not so much because she was at uni when she was prepping, but we've been coaching, so I think work life, it's quite positive. But obviously when you're coaching, what's that noise? When you're coaching, it's you run your own sort of day. You control when you work, so it's not that effective. Obviously, you're not as chatty and things like that. If you're someone who, for example, was a joiner, I could imagine it would be quite difficult. So it's always the thing of when you prep, like Luke, who is in the middle of my screen, if anyone can see him, he works as a chef, so he was working like split shifts, crazy hours, and he was still prepping. He still had to get up, do his cardio. He still had to go hit his meals. He still had to train. That's probably going to be quite difficult, but he didn't moan about it once. He just understood that that's what he had to do. So whatever you work as, you just need to plan it out good. With the relationships, it's always going to be a difficult one. So Robin always tells this story, like when, so we've been together 3 years. 2 years ago when I prepped, she did not understand it, like in the slightest. Like, because I'm normally quite a chatty person. She'd be saying stuff to me and I'd be like that. And it's hard. And I stupidly, considering I tell every client ever, explain this to your other half, never explained it. And then last year she just knew. And like, you have to be really, in a relationship, you should always be very open with each other anyway, but you have to really explain that sex drive's going to go down. Like, me and Vaughn have spoke about this a few times, but I was waking up at like 3 in. So every morning for 2 months, she woke up without me there. Like, I was up, I was doing work, I was doing cardio. It is a selfish sport, so you need to be very transparent with people about that.
Yeah.
What you find is, like, I'm kind of in a lucky situation because Robin's obviously more ripped than me most of the year, so she understands what dieting's like. It makes it a bit easier. But with the work, if you work as a coach, I think it becomes a positive as well, because as much as we hate this about the industry, if you get absolutely shredded for a show, guess what's going to happen? Yeah, you get busier and you get a lot of inquiries. So it shouldn't affect that. If you work in a normal day-to-day job, if you're employed, probably speak to your boss early, because if they see you and you're like that, you're probably going to get shouted at, so sort that. But it's one of those. The first prep, as Vaughn said, is a lot harder. It gets easier as you go.
I think if you were on the webinar a few weeks ago, the situation that Chloe's back in here as well, she said that she slept in the spare room for 8 weeks, right? And it's 100% true that can happen. And I'm quite, if like those that know me personally, I'm quite affectionate with Rona and whatnot. And last year, you know, she thought that something was wrong with her, or that, you know, the relationship was going down the pot, or, oh my God, is there a problem with me because Vaughn's not trying on with me or whatnot? It is the last thing on your mind, right? As a guy, it's the last thing on your mind, which is not the norm. So as a guy, if you're prepping, tell your missus, by the way, the last 6 weeks of my prep, I will not be trying on with you. Probably not going to hold her hand, right? And then there's about a 3-week period thereafter where you kind of get back to normal. So that's 9 weeks, right? If you've been going out with someone, or you've been in a relationship for 2 years, when was there a time period where there's 9 weeks where you guys didn't do anything intimately? It's like, well, it's why you hear, like, I jokingly hear a lot of bodybuilders say, "Oh well, if it wasn't a successful prep, you didn't break up with your girlfriend." Right? That's why they jokingly say that, because it can take a toll. But in the second, third year, they often really understand. From a female perspective, Clara, from Jack's, like, what's it like?
Well, pretty similar in the sense that the first year that I prepped, I obviously, because I'd never done it, I had no idea what I was going into. And I didn't notice that I was being super nippy and absolute, not a bitch half the time, but I just didn't want to entertain a conversation. I just could not be fucked. So I think I was about maybe 2 weeks out from my photo shoot, so 5 weeks out from my first show. And Jack just sat me down and he was like, this needs to stop. Like, what the fuck is going on? He was like, you're just not nice to be around. And I was like, what the hell? Like, it blew my mind because I had no idea how he was perceiving it. Like, obviously I never really explained what was happening because I didn't even know what was happening. So last year when I prepped, at the beginning we did kind of have not quite a sit down, but I was like, you know, this is my plan for the year. Like, these are the shows I want to do. And this is kind of what's going to happen. So the minute that Jack does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I jokingly told him that the minute that I start to be a bit of a nippy bitch, he's allowed to choke me out. If I just wake up like on a train, I'll know what happened. But obviously it just meant that whenever I was starting to be nippy, he'd just be like, you know, just letting me know straight away. In terms of with work, the first time I prepped, I was working part-time as a fitness instructor, just teaching classes, which was brutal. And then working in an office, which was also brutal because you have to deal with people's shit. And then last year I was finishing my master's thesis, which meant that I did have to go out of my way to get my steps in, go to the gym, get my cardio in, do my research, write it up, make it good and presentable. So that was a lot more of factoring in. So I guess, like Ali said, it's just about, like Luke, like you would have had to do, it's just about figuring it out. Like, you know what you're going into, you know what your life circumstances. So you say, okay, well, if I'm going to be sleeping like crap anyway, this is when I'll do some steps in the morning, get that through. Instead of driving to the gym or getting the bus to the gym, I'll walk to the gym, because then that's more steps done. And then I'll do my cardio here, and I'll do this here, and I'll do this there. And you just kind of figure it out as you go. It's not easy, but ultimately, like, how much do you want to achieve your goal, right? Like, if there's a will, there's a way. And even with the busiest of schedules, I mean, I know people who are single parents with 2 jobs who still manage to, you know, go on stage and grab trophies and look sick. And that's just because they're determined to do it, and they've got a plan in place, and they just fucking get on with it, and they just don't moan.
With just a quick story there, Clara said it getting snippy. If you are employed, this is why I always tell clients, like, speak to your bosses early, because there'll be times, and like Vaughn always takes the piss at me, and he always says that I'm so relaxed, I'm like lying down, which is true. But I remember when I was on prep 2 years ago, I was doing a hack squat, and there was this guy that used to come in the gym, and he was annoying as fuck at the best of times. And I was in the middle of a set, and I could tell he was speaking to me, and I had the headphones in. And mid-set, I took them out, and he was like asking me some stupid shit about a leg press, and I was like, look, fuck off. And then I just couldn't, but I worked for myself, so I was okay. But I felt myself sort of like, there's times where you're very like, just stupid stuff. You might be walking in Tesco and there's some person walking really slow, and all you're thinking in your head is, I would love to drop kick you. So, but without joking around with that, like, obviously that's a joke, but you do really need to be very aware, especially if you're in a job where you deal with the public. You have to be very, very good with that.
Yeah. I guess just having a system of being able to just like breathe it out, have a list of like small things that have irritated you, and then like a perspective shifter, like, this person's an absolute wanker, but at least they're not reading my mind. Like, I don't know, just it could be whatever helps you, to be honest.
Okay, right. I agree with all those points. I'm going to move on swiftly, because otherwise we're going to be here talking all night. The next question was about specifically shows this year, and apart from it being put on just for really competitor satisfaction, is there any other reason for shows to go ahead this year? Now, personally, I don't have any. I have one guy competing in the Two Bros show, and the rest of them we reverse dieted them out. So like I've opted for that option of shows might not be going ahead. Now, would there be any reason for shows to go ahead apart from people's own satisfaction and glorification? I think that the likes of Two Bros are going to they'll put on as many shows as they can. Why? Because what they will probably try and do is make a statement of we are like, the Fed for the athletes versus ones that perhaps will. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of PCA, but I feel like they ain't going to put any shows on, just simply because. I mean, it is a risk, obviously, but it's a business at the end of the day. So I think that any federation out there that's not in it for the money will put shows on. You've got the UKEP show this title for October. You've got the PCA for September. But realistically, if gyms open up here in October, no one's fucking doing any shows. You can put a show on, nobody doing it. So I don't really think that there's much to add to that apart from we've got a lot of photo shoot clients. Like a heck of a lot that have came on board recently or that have decided we'll do a photo shoot. So I would say do a photo shoot as early as you can, reverse diet out, and then just prepare for next year. Because that's like what I've done. I had 4 or 5 shows cancelled, and so I was prepared for next year. So I don't think there's too much else to add to that one.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
No, Clara, on to you.
The next question I had, it asked, what did I struggle with most? And I think anyone who's done a prep or like a prolonged diet here might agree, or I mean, you might not, but it's not the dieting, it's not the food. As I kind of touched upon before, it's just the lack of energy to do anything other than what you need to do. Because ultimately you're living life on like 2% battery, right? But within that 2% battery, you need to get 15,000 steps done, however many hours of cardio across the week. You still need to go and beat your logbook every freaking workout. And then like what's left over, like enough food to make a meal and eat it and then like pass out on the sofa. If you can even, if you're not in a context where like if you're working from home or if you're working at a gym and you can manage your own time. So I think that's the most difficult part, to be honest. It's just that lack of energy and how it just like suddenly hits you. Especially it's suddenly one day you're fine and the next day you're absolutely dragging your feet and you don't want to do anything other than sleep forever. So I think that is the most difficult part, because obviously then you don't want to socialize. You come across as just like being quite boring, whether that is to your partner or to your friends. And when everyone else isn't prepping and like, they're full of energy and they just see you drained, they might think that something's up when you're just knackered, and that's all it is. So I think that is the most difficult part. And I guess within that, getting people to understand that what you're doing has more of a purpose than just like looking good on stage, I suppose. Like my parents just do not comprehend it. My parents have no idea how much I weighed on stage, how much food I was on, because it will just go over their head. So if I was to ever Skype them in the evening to let them know, how I'm getting on, blah, 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 like I would make sure that my arms were covered. I would make sure that I like sort of had just eaten. So I had some energy to be like, hi, I'm fine. And then stop talking and just like, fall asleep or something. So I think that's my personal, like my biggest struggle. It's not the food. That kind of, it takes care of itself. It is what it is. But yeah, it's just a lack of energy.
Yeah, I think I agree, because all of us will be the same in here. So whether you compete or not, everyone that's in here loves training. And there's a point in prep, unless you're this big freak Vaughn, because he still hit a PB on a Widowmaker on a hack like 2 weeks out. Bastard. He also Widowmakered my top set. So, but there's a point where like you're training, but it is just going through the motions. And I think that's always difficult for me. But that cat is very cute, by the way. Yeah, I think it is just the energy levels. Like, food's not hard because, for the most part, all of us are very routine-based. It is just that point where, like, at the start of prep, you're going along, you're doing steps, it's easy. You get towards the end, you've done legs, you're trying to walk, and, like, every step, you're like, oh, my God, what is going on here? Like, that can be difficult because no matter how used to it you get, that doesn't get easy. Especially when, like, I work in a gym where there's, like, 2 flights of stairs and I'd be going up and down and, like, honestly, I'd be walking in slow motion. So, yeah, it's just the energy factor. I don't think the other stuff really affects me at all.
No.
For me, I get quite lack of empathy is perhaps a different word. Is the right word to use? Like,
Yeah.
if I see people complaining about how hungry they are or how much they're struggling, I'm like, fucking get on with it. I'm getting on with it, right? And that's quite a brutal like standpoint to take, but I just have got no patience for it because it's a choice, right? So when we see a lot of competitors saying, "Woe is me," "Oh my god, I'm so hungry," like, and that's maybe my like probably where I falter as a coach now is that I'm slowly losing that patience just because I've done it and I can relate to it and I understand it because I went through it. But having gone through it now, I'm just like, it's choice. Get on with it. Stop complaining. You're hungry. You're supposed to be. You're dying. You're supposed to be. But Vaughn, I'm not sleeping. Yeah, that's a side effect of it. You know what I mean? So I guess that's maybe where I need to get a little bit better as a coach. So that's only really I don't really struggle dieting.
Can I just say, for anyone that doesn't know, like everyone knows Vaughn, but for anyone who doesn't spend time with him, like everyone takes, like obviously Vaughn is robotic, but him on prep is like flawless. Like he might get a little bit
textbook prep, but literally
he might not chat as much, but like when he hits a set, he's still going for PVs and he deals with it very well. So I agree with him when he says that. Like, thankfully, touch wood, a lot of my clients don't complain, but I can see why it'd be annoying when people are like, "Oh, I'm hungry," and you're like, "Yeah, because you're ready to go on fucking stage."
But I think sometimes the way I coach brings out the best in people, right? And that's because, like, I'm not going to come down and sound like a ton of bricks, but when I do, it's because I see the potential in them. But potential is nothing without application.
Yeah,
simple as that, right? I mean, if someone's actually asked, and this is a question, I'll just answer it. The biggest mistake that I see competitors make is just setting an unrealistic goal. I'm like, you come on board and you tell me that you want to be a pro, but you want to be British champ or whatever, but you can't. This is your first time prepping, and it's been 4 weeks and you've binged. Like, if I'm prepping, then I don't have a lot of sympathy. Whereas if I'm not prepping, I maybe perhaps would have more. So that's maybe not the biggest mistake we see like competitors make, but I guess it's setting unrealistic expectations. And it's our job as a coach to say, like, listen, and I, like in a consult call, and it's funny, me and Clara, I think we said this, if Clara came on board now on what she looked like 2 years ago, I'd say, Clara, you're not stepping on stage for 2 years. But at the time, that level of coach I was like, well, I was learning, and I was like, yeah, let's do it, let's just see and whatnot. So you learn from your experiences. So I think that now as a coach, if a client comes on board and says, I want to compete, I say, well, 90% of the time, you're probably going to tell me that you want to do well, even though you're telling me that you don't. You want to be competitive. You want to get a placing, which by no means deems anything to do with your own self-worth. But I'm like, then give yourself a chance. Give yourself an opportunity. Don't go up there and just make up the numbers. We always just say that if you're up there representing yourself, but you're also representing the brand. And we just don't want to be putting up anyone out there that's not presenting the best of them possible, but also that represents the brand very, very well. And that's harsh to say, but it's business at the end of the day, right? And what we're trying to put across or become within 5 years is just, be the industry leaders for elite transformations in the UK. And that would happen from going on stage looking shy, if that makes sense, right? So biggest mistake would just be, like, don't rush it. Give yourself time. You know what? Like 5 years ago, if I tried to step on stage as a classic physique athlete, I would have got laughed at, right? But I said 5 years ago, I want to step on stage as a classic bodybuilder. I'll do it within 5 years.
Yeah.
This is the 4th year. Take 4 years.
Sorry, just to add to that, I think it's important also, like, if you've got the willingness to be patient with it, it shows that you're doing it for more than just a couple of cool Instagram photos. To be fair, I signed up for my first prep out of the fucking whim. I was like, oh, there's a show 3 weeks after my photo shoot, let's give it a go. I never know if I'll do it. And I knew that if I hadn't done it then, I would have never even tried to compete while doing a master's. So in a way it worked out well for me, but I just think that now, because it's becoming more popular, which I think is really cool, because it is such an amazing experience if you make the most of it, but I think it's really important to do it to know your why, and your why shouldn't just be the people that like getting likes on Instagram, like, oh my God, you look amazing, like, oh, you're going to win your show, and like getting all in your head. Like it should be a bit more than that, like a few more layers. And especially if you don't work in the fitness industry, like then it makes it even more important to have a bit more to it, in my opinion.
Ali, you got a question? You're next, buddy.
Yeah, so the next one is, this is quite a good one. I've kind of had two of the same, so I'll just intertwine them. So it was, looking back at previous preps, what would you change? So that one's directed at our own preps.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone else asked, has there ever been times that you look back on clients you prepped and you wish you'd done something different? Now, that's always going to happen as a coach, because, as Vaughan just said, we're trying to build something different here. So if you're not taking, there should always be positives, but you should always be looking at every prep and going, we can improve that. I think for me, personally, it's really easy. So Vaughan prepped me, so he'll say it as well. We just probably didn't go hard enough from the start, and didn't give me enough time. So I'm kind of like, Vaughan will lean up a lot faster than me, and he's quite even. My front will be ready 6 weeks out, and my back looks about 15 weeks out. So we just know for next time, I just need more time. And it's one of the, when you look back at it, that is one of the hardest things to take, when I'm like, if I had an extra month, I would have looked sick on stage. Another one with the preps, and this is me personally, posing is a must. Like we've got two very good posers on the team, like Vaughan's classic posing's class, and Clara teaches all my girls how to pose. I could move, but I didn't practice enough. So I'd say those are the two biggest ones, if I look back on them. But that's just a learning process. With clients, I won't go into too many clients, but like, there's certain times where, like, so last year, I don't know if Vaughan remembers this, but I was prepping Lauren for her show, and she was very lean for a bikini girl, like very lean. And I remember having the conversation with her. I was like, this was 6 weeks out. I said, I think we should stop pulling fat off now because you're ready. But what do you want? And she was like, I want to be as lean as I can. Now, as a coach, looking back on that, it doesn't matter what her opinion is, because we're trying to win her shows, not get her as lean as possible. She was doing bikini. So when we went, she'd done the UKBFF first, and the girl who won looked about 20 weeks out. Like, she was so curvy. And I spoke to the judge, and he was just like, mate, like, that's not what we want in bikini. We want curvy girls. It's supposed to be, in quotes, sexy. People aren't supposed to be freaked out when the girl comes on stage. And I think you always learn about stuff like that. So I'll know for next time when I diet, or she comes in very fast, we can diet in a less time frame. But there's always things you can learn from, or things you can change from everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if, as a coach, you're not, like, even when Clara got her pro card in UKUP, like, in the car journey back, I'm like, I could have done that differently.
Yeah.
Could have done that differently. Fuck, see, next time, that's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, like it was Ali's last show, Ali's fourth or fifth show, it was like the best look. It took 4 attempts before we were like, this is what we both agree is the best look, to then be, I'll get you a look. And then one of the ones that we didn't really think was anything, he gets himself second place, because different feds want different things, right?
Yeah. But Chloe's just messaged that, Vaughan, about different feds. I was just about to, so I have got a question on that just to go into it. What someone asked me about judging at shows, and it can be a difficult one because, like, there's a really funny photo of me at the PCA down south, and like, I was the heaviest on stage by like 8 kilos. Now, my condition could have been better, but the guy who won was standing beside me in a photo, and he looks like he's trained in the gym for 2 weeks. And that's what they wanted. When I spoke to the judge, he was like, you don't fit our criteria. And criteria is changed. So you could do 3 men's physique shows, but every federation wants something slightly different. And then it's the same with bikini. So when Chloe competed 2 years ago, she came second at the PCA in Scotland, and they the judge said to me, we spoke to them, and they said, she needs to be leaner. So I got her a lot leaner. We put her on stage at the finals. She didn't even place in the top 6. She was gutted about it. And when I spoke to the judge, he went, she is far too lean. Now, that's the same federation. And that's why it can be difficult. But what you have to remember is, it's a competition. There could be little things. You could walk on stage and someone could look and just go, I really don't like that guy's face. And you might not win because of that. And that's where you shouldn't ever be hard on yourself. You should just go, cool, on to the next one. And because after all, we are getting in this shape to, like, I always think about it like an art. You're getting in that shape because other people can't, and it's something you drive towards. So that's what's hard about feds. A lot of different opinions on, like Vaughn will tell you on the UKUP last year when I came second, there was only 3 of us on stage. One guy was like inside out lean, but he was small. I think he was like 65 kilos. I was 82 and relatively big. There was another guy who, he was okay shape, but he kind of just looked like he was going to Ibiza. And he won. And when I spoke to him backstage, the guy was like, he was saying sorry. He was like, mate, I don't know what's happened. I don't know why I've won. Turns out one of the judges does his posing, but you never know what's going to happen. So it is difficult with obviously different feds and things like that. Exactly, Chloe. Yeah, subjective sport. Exactly that.
I know. I think the most important thing is to know that whenever you step on stage, that you're presenting the best version of yourself, and that you've done everything in your power to get yourself to that condition. And at that point, like, the hard work is done. Like, you just need to enjoy it. I mean, even when I did UKUP, I did the female model, and then bikini, and the people who, the way they placed, like, it was pretty much the same group of girls, but the way that we ended up placing was slightly different because what they wanted for each category was just slightly different. And it might have just been the sass and the posing and the confidence on stage versus like that for the female model, versus then when you go and do your bikini, they're looking more at the muscularity and a bit more like body composition. So again, it's subjective. And I think that as long as you know that what you're presenting is your best you, and that you've not rushed to get there, and that you've enjoyed the process, and that on the day you're not thinking, oh, look at that person. Like, you just need to focus on you and just make the most of it.
I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm not going to name any names or the federation that did this, but this will tell you why you have to take everything with a pinch of salt in bodybuilding. A new competitor that hadn't competed was prepping for a certain show. They got a phone call from a federation that said, hey, do you want to represent us for Great Britain? Come and do this show. You'll place in the top 3. Right? So this competitor is dieting down for a certain show, and the federation's phoned them to say, we'll give you a medal, just come and do this one. Doesn't matter how you look, but obviously we want you to represent us on X date. So let's say perhaps they needed to represent that federation 6 weeks after that show they're going to place in. Do you think they're going to get this condition for that 6-week one, out one, as they will for the finals? Not a chance. But think of yourself. You've never competed before. You're a beginner. You're putting absolutely everything into it. Perhaps you're working 9 to 5. You've made a lot of changes in your lifestyle and whatnot. You're not even getting a look, right? So what I'm saying is, especially if you're a first-time competitor, you've got to hang around. You've got to do it again and again and again. You've got to come back, you've got to come back, you've got to come back. Why? Because there is bodybuilding politics. If you think there's not, then, you're naive to it. But that's okay. But the thing is, if you continue to get better and you come back and you come back, you'll have a physique that when you step on stage, people will just go, holy fucking shit.
Yeah.
Who is that? And that's what you want to do. And it's like it's a progression up within bodybuilding, doing bodybuilding shows, is that the more you do it, like, you'll place one day. It doesn't, that's not necessarily going to be right now. It's just that if you keep coming back and you go away and you work on the feedback and you find a federation that has that you like the look, then you'll be sound. Like, for example, I'll never be a men's physique guy. Why? I'm just too ugly. Right? But I can fit in classic physique and 2 bros, and I fit in there quite well. Right? The best, like, and again, as Ali said, like, the one thing that frustrates me is when it's an all-male judging panel and they're judging a bikini class or a toned figure class. I don't care what anybody says, the decisions they make, if there's 2 girls that look exactly the same, exactly the appeal, there's got to be something that comes in the back of their mind of who they just like the look of better. When was the last time you saw anyone that won that was ugly?
It is so true, by the way. It's so
Right?
true.
That's why I wouldn't make it in men's physique. I place last every single time. Right? So you've got to think of it's going to be the best version of you. And sometimes you see if you just don't like competing, just don't do it. Just do a photo shoot. Like Ali's not going to compete again. Why? He's a little bitch. I mean, he just doesn't like competing.
Well, I need a 3-year off season for my arms.
In general, sorry, that was me going off on a little bit of a tangent. I think it's back to me for questions.
Yeah,
Just a nice simple one. Someone asking me how long would I diet someone for, and reasons why, as long as it takes. Is right. If someone is 26 weeks out, visually they are 26 weeks out. Right. So if it's going to take you more than half a year to get in, then that's what you do. Right. If someone has a lot less body fat and visually they're looking about sort of 12, 14 weeks out, you're probably thinking, well, Vaughn, how do you know visually? Well, you just get experience and you work with a lot of people, right? And you can roughly guess how much total weight they need to take off for them to be in condition, right? So let's say if you have 15 kilos to lose, you're not going to do that in 10 weeks, man. Not unless you're maybe an assisted male bodybuilder that's taking all kinds of fat burners, right? But as a natural bikini girl, then more than likely you're not going to have, probably not going to have to take off 15 kilos, but let's say you did. That's going to take you 20 to 26 weeks. As an average, people are roughly going to lose anywhere between sort of 10 to 12 kilos per prep, you could say. Some might be less, depending upon sort of like where their starting point was. If you do a regional and then you do a final that's 5 weeks later, your prep's going like, you've dieted for, say, 16 weeks for the regional, and the finals, Clara, 5 weeks later. 5 weeks, right? So you get this big high, you do a show, and then 5 weeks. So that's where, like, she was just checking in multiple times across the week, every single day. We'd have a chat about things. And I think that, again, there's no, it can't be more than 18 weeks, because just what if they lose muscle mass? I'm kind of like, well, I've had this scenario where someone has just been, like, riddy up top, and their glutes and their legs just are not coming in, and they will not. I'm like, if we pull down further, the lower body will fade, and it'll be past the point of salvaging any sort of good look up top to get the legs in. So then at that decision, you make a decision and say, right, we're going to go in with soft legs. Or do we diet harder, go in with a shit upper body, and maybe the legs haven't even responded. Mm-hmm. In that sense, you're just not ready, and you need to spend more time building tissue. Or you need to play about with some lipolytics. But,
see, as well with that, Vaughn, what you were saying, like, it's the same kind of question. So that is how long it roughly is prep. It's the same with how low my calories go. It's the same with how much cardio I do and all that stuff, because everyone's different. There's no, this is like, it's not like I just send a blueprint to everyone in this chat saying, follow these calories, you'll get shredded. It doesn't work like that. There's differences to all. So it's exactly, some people can prep faster, but probably they've prepped before, they're in a very good position, or they just respond really well and they adhere. So it is just pretty much that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We have a lot of time left. Clara, you got any other questions before we start firing into the ones in the chat?
One of the questions that I got was about cheat meals. Can you have cheat meals during your prep? And I think that I'll tie that back to what Ali said in terms of what would you change about your preps in the past. And what I would change is that in my first prep, I was just like, right, prep, i.e. clean eating, nothing nice and enjoyable for the next 18 to 21 weeks. And I think that that's a massive mistake that you can make. And I think that what I learned in my second prep is that, especially at the beginning, like, as long as you're sort of eating within your macros, as when you've got enough food to play about with, you don't need to be a martyr if you don't want to. Like, it's okay to still have like different foods on the weekend and sort of manipulate your calories and your meals to still have like a factor of quote unquote but more enjoyment, if you're not a robot like Vaughn and just can eat the same shit 60 times a day. I like eating different foods on the weekends. I just enjoy it. And I remember my first prep, I had nuggets every Saturday, like every single week throughout the prep, because I sort of factored them into my macros. The first, I think, 12 weeks of my prep last year, I was still having like low-calorie pints of ice cream on a weekend. Like if new chocolate bars came out, I would sort of like macro hoard and have one like on a Saturday or like on my birthday or whatever. So I think in terms of cheat meals, obviously, no, that's just daft. Don't go and cheat on your diet, even though I don't like that term, if you are prepping, because, I mean, then like, what are you trying to achieve? Like, why would you go and do that? I think that's time to have a discussion with your coach as to why that might be coming in, because ultimately you're just making it so much more difficult for you. There's more layers to that onion, obviously. And of course, you're going to be tempted to eat all the food, random food that you've never actually wanted because you're hungry, as we said before. But no, cheating on your diet would be quite silly, but I think it's something that a lot of us in our first prep have done. I remember my first prep, I had a massive slip up. I just had the most stressful day, and the next thing you know, I was on the floor in my kitchen crying with my hand in a massive cereal box, just shoving Curiously Cinnamon into my mouth. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. And I text from being like, so this has happened. But obviously, no, always something to discuss with your coach.
See, with that as well, I think if anyone in here is looking to compete at some point, follow a meal plan. So I have never followed a meal plan, and that is probably the reason that next time when I prep, I will follow a meal plan. I think it makes your life... Yes?
I provided you with a meal plan last year. You just went, fuck that, I'm not doing it.
Oh, the shade!
That was fucking boring, I'm not eating that.
It's because
it depends. I've never followed a meal plan, but I eat the same stuff Monday to Friday. So it's not a meal plan, but it kind of is.
Yeah, 100%. I think though the way I do it, so as a bodybuilder, I am, or someone that trains in this way, I eat a little bit more exotic food, I'd say. But when you're on prep, it's not about that, because I think it then became, I was probably utilising like tracking calories from stuff that didn't need to be in the food because I wanted it to taste better. Whereas that's like, we speak about this a lot, your calories are there to help you train. So I was probably having less pre-workout carbs so I could fit in like a tiny bit of crap into the dinner. It's not really that effective. So if anyone's ever thinking about that, obviously my client Matt over here likes flexible dieting. I think flexible dieting works, but not when you're trying to get absolutely shredded. And yes, Pop-Tarts are exotic.
I didn't have one Pop-Tart on prep until I was carb loading. 22 in 2 days.
I don't think I've ever had a Pop-Tart in my life.
Right, moving on. I got like a summary question. I think it's too hard to answer all of them. And it said questions about support system, self-doubt, confidence on stage. That's like, you could easily speak to 10, 20 minutes on either one of those. One thing we've probably not covered, I'd probably say, well, support system we have, self-doubt we've probably not. Now, the thing is, I'm going to use Clara as an example, because she is a good example. I know that in our send of prep, Clara's head kind of goes. She thinks she's really fat. Now, here's the thing. She'll wake up and she'll look in the mirror, and one day she'll be like, holy shit, I'm looking good. Check my fucking arse out. This is amazing. Right? Then the next day, she wakes up and she goes, oh my God, I'm so bloated. Oh, I'm so fat. Oh, this is like, and her head goes, right?
I can attest to that. That is true.
So, and the reason I got Clara checking in, I think when I worked out, Clara checked in like every day for like 10 or 12 weeks, right?
About that, yeah.
Now, imagine this scenario. Clara wakes up and she has this thought, and let's say she hasn't checked in. She has this thought, and it lasts all day. But what that does is that it affects her training session, it affects perhaps her mood around her partner, it affects her university work at the time, she's doing a master's, and everything else. And then let's say, again, she doesn't check in the day after that. This gets worse, and it spirals out of control. Whereas take the flip side of this. Clara wakes up, she has that thought. After she has that thought, she has to put a pair of heels on, and she has to do some quarter turns, some, shoulder winks and whatnot. And then she has to send it over to me. As she sends it over, she gives me a little spiel about how she feels and whatnot, which I used to ignore. And I would send a little comparison between sort of yesterday and today and be like, we're better today. And she'd go, oh, wow. right? Look at the difference in mood, right? Between, oh my God, I'm thinking fat. Now, it's just because your perception of yourself in that time period is so skewed because you're just comparing to like being fucking shredded and Mike trying to micromanage everything. But the difference is, at the time, like I'm outside perspective. I'm not in her brain, right? I'm just assessing. It's my job to assess her physique and think, right, are we ready? Are we fading? Are we coming in too fast? Blah, blah, blah. But because of her mental state, what it's like at the end of prep, she doubts herself. I don't know if I'm going to be ready. I think that, well, this actually isn't what Clara does, but some girls out there will be like, oh, I follow X, Y, and Z, and oh my God, they're looking so good, and oh my God, I don't look as good as them. Unfollow them, right? Because all they're doing is creating self-doubt in your head. All you got to do is just, with conversation with your coach, right, are we on track? Are we better? Is this the best is this the best, say at the time, Clara we could present? And the answer was yeah. Now, again, like Clara's first show to her second show, unbelievable fucking difference. Like she went on stage and I was like, holy fucking shit, like the difference in her delts and her muscularity. Well, she walked out in that first PCA regional and I just went, shit. Right? Just simply because the other girls were just bigger. And they were older, and no matter what she'd done in that 6-7 month period, which was phenomenal, it just wasn't quite enough at that time period. But the difference was, did she let that affect her or sway her? No. 2 weeks after that, we had a regional UKUP, and she won, and she came third. And she fitted more with that federation. But what often can happen is competitors will put their all, and this was me, they put their all into one show, right? I'm the fucking hardest worker in the room, I'm going to show up, I'm going to fucking win, blah, blah, right? Clara never did any of that. Clara was just like, I'm better than last year. I feel like I've won already. I feel like I'm doing good, right? But you'll always doubt yourself if you haven't got the support system in place. So I guess that links into the two questions. You have a community around you, like, that has had those self-doubts, that has had those problems, that's been through it all, that said, you know what, a couple of years ago I used to compare myself to others. A couple of years ago I went through this. A couple of years ago I pushed everyone away. That was me, right? If you weren't interested in my prep, I wasn't interested in you, right? No mates, absolutely none. My one mate was Ali, and he was in Australia at the time, right? We spoke on WhatsApp every single day because that's how I dealt with it. That's the only way I knew, right? But it's only the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I think that the more times I do it, the less I doubt myself, because whatever I want to achieve, I've manifested over the course of years. Mm-hmm. Like when I competed like 2 months ago, it wasn't a case like I didn't get any buzz or excitement in doing it. It was just like, yeah, I saw this happen. This was good. Like I manifested this years ago. But two people think that it's like, I'm like, at the end of the day, it's just a fucking show. Mm. It shouldn't change your life, your relationships, your marriage, your whatever it is, because no one else in the world cares apart from your coach.
So true.
Yeah.
People pub and sink 10 pints every Friday. They don't care that you're grinding, right? That you're hustling, because you're not, right? You're just choosing to do this one thing that I personally think is amazing, and it's what brings us all together, right? Which is getting shredded for a show. And I think that the pride that you feel when you make it is something that no one can compare to unless you've done it. And you will not be able to describe that to someone that hasn't been through the process. But like, the first time I prepped, like, and you could probably always say this, like, I had a cry because I was really proud of myself. And then like someone that's normal is looking at me like, what? Right? So like you are going to doubt yourself. People will doubt you, but it's about how you deal with that.
Yeah. Can I just add to the crying? The last day, like my last training session after a 24-week prep before finals, last year, I literally like had to stop the treadmill early because I was literally bawling my eyes out. Just a proper drama queen. I had like the happy music, everything was working, but I was just like, I can't believe I did this. And I went to the bathroom and I was actually there sobbing for a solid 10 minutes. And I was like, if anyone sees me, they're gonna think something's really wrong, when in fact I'm just so happy. But like, I look like I'm heartbroken right now. So, you know, I think, as you said, it's that self-doubt. It is going to be inevitable, but you just need to curate your circle. I mean, you can mute anyone on Instagram, get them to fuck, 8 weeks out. If you start to compare yourself, get them away. If someone isn't inspiring you to be better, they can go. If you see someone and you immediately start thinking, oh, but look at them, blah, blah, see you later. Like, I don't need to see that right now, especially when you're getting closer to a show. And you will doubt yourself, but ultimately that's why you've got a coach and that's why you've got a team, because they're the ones that are going to be like, don't doubt yourself. Look at how far you've come. We're all so proud of you. You should be proud of yourself too. And that's what you need to go into a show with, I think.
Can I just, I'll quickly run this up one so we're not taking too long, but like the thing is with that, like doubts are like a crazy thing. So if you look at any billionaire in the world, do you think they had doubts at the start? Probably. But do you know what they've done? They were proactive. And it's the thing of, especially, this is the crazy thing about prep, right? For example, last year, one of my clients kept looking at other people on Instagram. But like, for example, she was competing in bikini. She would be sending me photos of girls like Chloe going, oh my God, look how much bigger she is than me. And I'd be like, yeah, but that's also like me sending you a photo of JP. Like, it's not the same thing. And what you have to realize with this whole comparison thing on social media, like, I think it's one of the hardest things for people dieting. Like, we always speak about our circle and like everything like that, but there's a reason when you look at photos of me and Vaughn 4 years ago and photos of me and Vaughn now, our legs are so much bigger. It's because we train together. We have the same drive towards something. One of my mates could text me all day long for 3 weeks asking to train. I'm not going to train them. So it's the same with when you're dieting. People put, like, the reason people get so like stressed out on stages, they're looking at people who, and you don't ever look at someone who's at the same level as you or the same stage of your journey. You're looking at pros. Like, I'm never going to look like C-Bum. Doesn't matter what gear I take. So why would I be looking at him comparing myself? And that is what Vaughn said. It's such a big thing, having that community. Like I've said to clients before, like I said this to Chloe before she competed in the UKUP, I said, delete Instagram. 2 weeks. She honestly did not say anything about any other person, because as soon as it wasn't there, she wasn't comparing herself. And I honestly think that's the reason she came in looking better. Mm-hmm. It's not something, yeah, exactly, like Chloe saying, blinkers on.
100%.
If you want to just get on stage and do well, focus on you. And it's something that, like, that energy, like the amount of times I see people prep and they spend more energy putting shit and looking at shit on Instagram than they do actually doing their training session.
100%.
Get that in the bin. Like, that's not going to help you. Like, there's, like, it doesn't, if me and Vaughn were both stage lean, we can stand beside each other all day long and compare notes on how we look, but he's twice the size of me. Like, it's never going to be the same thing. But guess what? That's not what we do. When Vaughn's lean, I'm like, cool, mate, you look great. Vice versa. It's not a competition with anyone but you. And remember that, especially when you go on stage, blinkers on, and the self-doubt will always be there. But when you come off stage, set a new goal and get to work.
Exactly.
Just to surmise,
Mic drop.
Say that the first time you prep, you'll hate it. It'll be the hardest thing you do. You will say, and I've said this, and Ali has said this, I will never compete again, will often be your words. Right? I said that. I was adamant. But the thing is, time changes, right? And you start to think of what you could have done better, should have done better, and realise that, well, actually, you know what? I didn't look sick. I look fucking shit, and next time I'm going to look better. And sometimes it needs to become an understanding that you need to do it again, and source of, not for redemption, but just because it's so much easier the second time and the third time. And the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? Because it becomes your lifestyle. The thing is, if it's your first time doing it, you've went from kind of eating whatever you want to you can't eat anything above this certain limit. And you're in an environment perhaps where you don't have me shouting at you on the hack squat every day like Ali's got, right? You've got Sandra from the fucking office seeing if you want cookies every single day. And you have, for once in your life, have to say no, right? So that first time that you have to say no and have to do that, it can just be really hard. But the second and third time, eventually, Sandra's going to stop asking, because Sandra's just going to think you're a weirdo, right? But the thing is, Sandra's just insanely jealous of how you look. Now, I think that's kind of, if we've not covered anything, then you've asked us a question, just DM us individually if you've asked us specifically the question, and we'll answer it for you, just personally through a voice note. As I said, I will be putting